This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Don't get me wrong, if you're like an amazing painter and you love painting the same model 42 times in exquisite detail, do that. But that's not me.
For the rest of us plebeians, we'll be content with, bone white over here.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm joined with Mike and David. How you guys doing?
So what do you mean by joined with? Because that's kind of weird.
Did I say joined with or joined by?
We're a three-headed ogre.
Yeah.
Three-headed ogre, there you go.
From that Monty Python movie.
Yeah. Well, that was a three-headed knight, not an ogre.
No, well, yeah, it was a three-headed knight, but he was a pretty big boy.
Yeah, he was a badass. He jousted, he threw a lance through like 4 dudes at once.
Yeah. That's why I think he's an ogre, because he's like super strong. Anyway, we'll be separated at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Please help.
Wow, did not anticipate Monty Python coming up on this episode. Anyway.
Or did you?
Hopefully you're not getting too stir crazy. I have been painting marginally successfully my droids. So, what about you guys?
Black primer.
Still on that black primer?
Well, I'm out. I'm out of it. I don't have any more. The stores are out. It's like $40 on Amazon. I don't know what to do.
Have you tried Miniature Market?
I have not, but I don't know.
So I ran out of whatever the brown wash is called, Agrax Earthshade, which those bottles are freaking enormous. The fact that I ran out should be telling. And then I also ran out of the basing stuff, whose name is also escaping me. But I found it on Miniature Market, and they're still delivering right now for normal price. So,
Really?
Yeah, this is they're not like paying me to say that or anything, but you can still buy paint there, and I did. So
I'm about to find out, so I'll let you know in just a second.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, I have black airbrush primer, so if you're really desperate, drive down to my place and I'll prime for you.
It'd probably be better than the spray can, frankly.
It would definitely look better.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a primer. It doesn't need to look good.
Yeah. Well,
rattle canning is like, applying just kind of an oversized hammer to a solution. It's just too much, too fast, in my opinion. I think the airbrush is so much more controllable, right? That's probably why you get the better look, because you can manage a thinner layer. And then less primer, of course, means more details.
I don't know. I find the Citadel stuff, the Citadel spray cans are actually pretty light.
Yeah, I like them.
They're pretty good. The best part for me about priming with an airbrush is that it's like weather neutral. Like if you do a spray can in the wrong kind of weather, you can get like, it can be like dusty or it can get like bubbly. You got to like check the weather before you prime minis with a spray can.
Citadel spray paint Chaos Black out of stock.
RIP.
All right. Well, that's a bummer.
RIP, as is all of their other Citadel spray paints.
Well, it was worth a shot.
It was worth a shot. Thank you.
Everyone's at home painting right now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in the last couple of days, I've actually been. So I can't do any of my spraying inside because I don't really have this places for that. So I do it outside. It's been nice out. So
it's been super nice out.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit some plugs real quick before we get to the news. Invader League is starting in May. Sign-ups start this Sunday, on the 12th of April.
You better believe that's going to fill up fast.
Well, it's the only Legion any of us are getting. So
yep, this is the way to play Legion right now. So yeah, I mean, and even last season when there was not a bunch of people sitting at home unable to play real Legion, it hit like 150 144 or whatever the limit was in just a few days. So
Yeah, it was fast.
So yeah, get on that computer on Sunday and sign up.
Do we know what the upper limit is for how many they're accepting this time around?
Don't actually know. What did they say?
I think it's possible that there might not be one. Like, I'm sure there's an initial one, but if they hit, if somehow they hit like 256 or something like that, in theory, the only size limitation is like server bandwidth, right?
I mean, we're not really hosting it on a. I don't think that's an issue,
right? I guess my point is there's no like practical size limitation because we don't have to scrum up real tables, or fill up real space.
Logistically, just managing that many people is a lot.
Right, because you need judges for each group and stuff like that. Yeah. So the limitations are management oriented, not physical space and tables.
What they did last season was they would take players who they knew were qualified and they would have them judge like 5 groups they weren't in, and they would if they know people are qualified enough to judge, they can still judge as long as they're just not judging their own group, of course, which is has a ton of obvious problems. But that's kind of how they did it last year. I imagine they'll probably do the same thing. But again, like you say, it might not just be 5 groups; it might be like 10 groups because we have no idea what the upper limit of the registrants is going to be because things are so wild right now, given real world events.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, there's been a big influx on the Discord and stuff. So
yeah, we've had a ton of Discord joinees. Zach put out a post just with the poster as well as which units would be legal. Basically, it seems like everything we have like reasonably full spoilers for. So Staps, the clone ATRT, Padme and Cad Bane with a limited command card suite for each of them. And then also in the mod are BX droids and arcs. Notably not in the mod, and apparently not going to be in the mod by round robin, is Vital Assets.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, apparently it's very different to add battle cards and deployment zones and stuff like that to the mod than it is to add like new units. So I'm hardly an expert on such things. I couldn't even figure out how to subscribe to our own Fifth Trooper YouTube page. So, but the TLDR I got was that it's much more difficult to add stuff like that than it is new units. So, anyway.
Yeah, it seems to be like deeper into the construction of the actual TTS mod than most other things. Like just if you like whatever machinery is behind, put the card in the slot and hit the button, they have to tinker with that to enable it for the rest to expand those options. So that I think is definitely going to be a slight bit more difficult than adding new units.
Yep. Anyway, so round robin will be free of vital assets. Will just be the standard cards. So I guess that makes list building a little easier, if not less interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so that's Invader League. The big news today. Let's just jump into the news.
Welcome to In the News.
So we got new tourney regs today from FFG.
Indeed, we did.
There's basically 3 things in there I want to talk about. The first we kind of talked about already, but we can hit it a little bit, is tiebreak has been changed to margin of victory instead of strength of schedule. The second is silhouettes, which Luchetti actually came on our cast and talked about and sort of previewed a few episodes ago, a couple weeks ago, like a month ago, actually. And then the third thing is the terrain guidance, which is in there. Let's talk briefly about strength of schedule and MOV first. So we talked extensively about this topic back in episode 70, which is appropriately titled SOS, when there were rumors that something like this was going on. So if you want to hear our full opinions on that, please listen to that episode. But yeah, margin of victory is is now the tiebreak for if records are similar or not similar, the same. So yeah, I mean, the short version of our opinions, which I think we mostly share from the SOS versus MOV episode, is that MOV is just reverse strength of schedule, right? Strength of schedule rewards you for playing players that are relatively even matched. It rewards you for even matchups, and then MOV rewards you for lopsided matchups. So MOV has the additional detriment of actually affecting how you play the game on the table. It incentivizes crushing. Like if you're winning a game, you have the incentive to basically step on your opponent's throat and win more. Which, I mean, I guess if I don't know, it's not a great environment for where this is mostly likely to come into play, which is like local store tournaments. I think it's unlikely to matter for the most part at like convention tournaments because most of those have enough rounds where undefeated players are not getting cut by tie breaks. But definitely like for your 3-round and a cut prime tournaments, this is going to be an issue, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna let you guys talk about it because I have nothing but bad things to say. So I'm
Maybe
filled with fury.
okay. Maybe So maybe we can start like sort of breaking this out or like unpacking it, I guess. So the way that MOV works in Legion is now going to be it's sort of the ratio of victory points that you've scored out of the total number of victory points available. So the example they give is a game where Ingrid, that's player A, I'll guess, is 3 points, and her opponent, player B, has 2. And so there's 5 total points. And so Ingrid scored 3 of those points. So she would end up with 60% of the total victory points in the game. So her margin of victory is 60%. So what is that? What's the fallout of that? It means that, like, say, an objective that you end tied, your MOV is kind of stuck at 50 or 50% because you've scored half of the available points. It also means that games you win 1-0, you walk away with all of the MOV. So, for example, breakthrough, where you get 1 unit through and your opponent doesn't get anything through, now you have 100 MOV in a situation like that. This gives weight to ways to score additional points outside of the objective. So, for example, secret mission, which has kind of been a hot topic of discussion because it opens the door to new win conditions, and now will also open the door to stronger MOV. And so it just makes secret mission even more valuable than it already was. Bounty similarly, but not as it's not as willful, I guess. Because bounty, your opponent can just work to deny you that. And I guess that you could do it against R2 secret mission stuff, but at the same time, I think there's ways to deploy R2D2 where he gets really hard to stop. And if you really do want to stop him because he can repair himself, he kind of takes on this like juggernaut role of like, oh my gosh, I can't actually beat out this unit in time because it's got 4 health, has inconspicuous, and can repair itself twice. So it gets a little bit nuts trying to stop secret mission. There's more. I just need a little bit of time to organize my thoughts. What do you guys think? I mean, I think that's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit most of the keynotes. It emphasizes objectives like key positions and hostage exchange simply because there's less victory points and you're going to get a bigger margin of victory if you win. Like 1 victory point on intercept transmissions is worth a lot less than 1 victory point on key positions. It it shapes battle decks. It shapes the aggressiveness of the lists you need to bring. you're either cutting sabotage now or you're bringing a list that's aggressive on sabotage now, which is very different than what we had before. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. This fundamentally changes the game in a lot of ways.
Right, and like you're saying, now you have to weight a battle card inclusion via, what is it going to do to my MOV?
Right.
And I mean, you do that in other game. In Armada, for example, is like my primary example of this because it's the most analogous, I think, thing we have in FFG's style of games. One, because it's an alternating activation game. Two, because MOV is considered when you score games when you score tournaments in that game. Shoot, I was going to say something else. Yeah, so you have the crushing victory thing, but you've also got the whole idea that if you go undefeated, none of this matters.
Right.
Well,
and so
Or
and so
almost none of it.
That's not actually true because at like local primes, you have the actual tournament structure has not changed. This does not change the fact that it's possible for undefeated players to get cut.
Well, I think what you meant there, David, was if the tournament goes the proper number of rounds and
Right.
you're undefeated, this does not matter, right?
Right.
And the issue there is that the big major tournaments that matter a lot, this probably has little to no functional repercussions in. But what it does is it incentivizes you to go beat the crap out of your local store bros as hard as possible in order to get your prime championship invite.
Yeah, you're scrabbling now for those coveted top 2 spots, and going 3-0 is not enough if your MOV isn't high enough.
Right, and so to ensure that your MOV is high enough, you're encouraged to pulverize people at local store tournaments.
And
Which
hope
is
that you
bad
get
for the
matched up
game.
against the new guy in the first round.
Right, and I think, yeah,
It's awkward. It's
you're gonna join the Seal Cub Clubbin' Club, as I know some folks have deemed it, where you're trying to find the weakest player at the tournament and beat them as hard as possible.
yeah. I mean, like, I don't want to this feels super X-Wing to me. Like I don't know. Like it feels like X-Wing is very technical. It's very, you show up and you know that there are people there that are way better than you and that you're gonna get crushed, and that and this feels like it's like pushing us towards that. And I think that that's something that has been really good about our community up until this point, and that we kind of foster, not that X-Wing doesn't, but X-Wing has a very elite top, set of players, and I feel like it's tough to break into that, and I don't know.
Do you think that's already true of Legion and it's just not as overtly talked about?
Well, I mean, I think there's a big difference in losing to, Luke Cook and the score being 5-4, and maybe you really weren't in the game, right? But you at least still feel like you're in the game at that point, Whereas if you're losing 9-0, that's not fun for anybody, know? And I just I mean, it's not for the fun. It's not fun for the player that's doing it. It's not fun for the player that's on the receiving end of it. I just those games are not interesting. And yeah, maybe the game is just as close as it would have been, but at least you come out of it if you're a newer player and you're like, oh man, I'm playing Luke Cook. He beat me 5-4. At least that's a story, Whereas a 9-0 game is just you don't even want to talk about that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Well, we'll see how this works out. Maybe if this turns out to be sufficiently awful, then we'll go back to SOS and people won't complain about it anymore.
Two other small and maybe not so small points. If the bullet about a player wishing to concede and then the players agreeing to either score the game as it lies on the table or score it as 100-0. Why would you ever score it as it lies?
You never would.
You never
one
will.
one player will never opt for that decision.
Yeah, there is
It's
no
never going to
incentive.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're either going to have people conceding 100% because it's a feel bad, or they're being forced to play out a game that they would concede normally.
Right, because
Yeah.
they're battling for as much MOV as they can retain.
Yeah.
And it's actually worth noting that we already have a major tournament that has been using MOV or some form of it, and that's Invader League. And in round robin, it's relevant, what your MOV is because the top two players advance, and you can have ties on records. And like I've definitely had situations where it's really awkward in Invader League, where the opponent's like, "I'd like to concede," and I'm just like, "Yeah, that's fine. We can score it as it lies. Like, I'd really like the chance to table you, but I don't want to make you play a game you don't want to play." But I know there's also situations that happen where, like you described, one player's like, "I'm going to lose. I don't want to play the remaining 3 turns of this game out." And the other player's like, "I'm sorry, I can't accept your concession because I could score more points if, we played 3 more turns of me murdering you."
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, there was I think it was like season 1 or season 2. I actually got into it with LJ for like 30 minutes because the situation came up where like I should have scored more than I did because a player conceded and then I didn't make the cut because my MOV wasn't high enough. And I was like, this isn't working for me. This like isn't fair. And it was early on in Invader and whatever. But like that's not a feel good for anybody. It's just
Yeah, it's just it makes concessions instantly awkward. Like
yeah,
a concession should be a situation where one player is like, all right, I'm not going to win this. Let's use the time we have left in this round to maybe we can talk about, what we each could have done better. And you have like a nice handshake, like growth moment out of it. Whereas now it's like just super awkward, instantly whenever one player wants to concede.
Right, it
So
can result in some bitter squabbling depending on the points landscape.
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
The
Anyway,
other point that I found interesting was that if a player doesn't show, leaves the game early without properly conceding, that's interesting, or is given a game loss by a leader, that player's MOV is 0. So now you have an incentive to call your opponent out for cheating, even if they're not, because now I can try to invoke that my player was doing something, and my opponent was doing something untoward, and if I can convince a leader that this is game loss worthy, I get 100 MOV. So there's some opportunity for corruption there.
I mean,
Some small, but I trust that our leadership is wise enough to catch on to this, but that may not be the case in every tournament.
don't be a shithead is all I have to say about
Yeah,
that.
please don't. Yeah, and we mean that. We mean that sincerely. Don't be a yeah.
and that applies to everything surrounding this change, I think, because this creates more opportunities to do that. And I think we have to just, as a community, collectively try not to abuse those opportunities, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I'm sort of in the bucket. Let people abuse it as much as they want until people complain and have it go back to the way it was.
Well, that's another view.
It's frankly how I feel about it.
If a player receives a bye for the round, they gain an MOV for that game equal to the average MOV of all their other games for the tournament. So does that mean if I get a bye and get 2 crushing victories, I now have a 3rd crushing victory?
That is exactly what that means.
Wow. Wow, that's a really good incentive for getting a bye.
Assuming
Presuming
your
I
other
can
victories have been crushing.
Yeah, presuming you can crush your other games. Yeah.
Well, I don't mind that one specifically. I actually think that it probably should just be a 100-0 MOV. That's what it is in like basically every other game. So normally like for like in most other competitive games, if you get a bye, your SOS or your MOV for that is considered whatever like 1.0 is, right? Um, it probably should just be that. I don't know why we're getting into like algebra, but whatever.
Well, and I guess it's important to note that there is a significant gap between 100 to 0 MOV and what even a strong victory you're likely to score on certain objectives, which is like a 0.66, right? Like you look
Oh
at
yeah,
key positions, for example. If you get the center KP and nobody has secret mission, that's 0.6 to 0.33, and that could be like a crushing victory, right?
Yep.
But that's still like a third less MOV than you can get from 100 to 0 from a concession, or your opponent getting an automatic game loss or something like that.
or you just like sliding something in on breakthrough, or it's just like,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, like, I understand what they're trying to do, but it still seems arbitrary.
Yeah, right. It's just differently arbitrary.
Yeah, it's like, if you're gonna make it arbitrary, at least make it neutral. I don't know.
For more, you can tune into episode 70.
Yeah, please refer to episode 70.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about silhouettes, because I think this is my favorite part of these tourney reg changes.
Yeah, I think this is the most positive thing to come out of this change is the silhouette rules.
The most positive. I like how you phrase that. Yeah. I mean, they're good. This is great. I can now play my Celebration Vader and not feel bad about it. Right?
Yeah, I can play Commander Luke at no disadvantage.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what this is for people that don't know what silhouettes are. Luke himself talked about this a bit ago on one of our episodes when we interviewed him. So tune into that if you want to hear his thoughts. But basically, it's like you put there's like a predefined dimension for a silhouette, and they're basically saying you can cut out paper and use it. There will undoubtedly be other ways to do this, but there's like a predefined rectangle size, and you put said rectangle behind a trooper mini if there's doubt as to whether or not you can see that mini when you're attacking them. And then if you can see the silhouette, then then you can see, and if not, then you can't see. So basically, this removes disincentives for like modeling creatively. Like if you want to, like if you want to put an ARC trooper on those awesome flight stands, go ahead. You're not going to make him more visible by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's notable that this actually dramatically changes characters like Boba Fett, that now are going to draw line of sight much lower than they would normally.
Yeah, because it goes both ways, right? There's also like a little, if you look at the diagram in the tourney regs, which I would encourage people to do, there's like a little line that you use to draw a line of sight from the mini also.
So anything on a flight stand like doesn't get bonus height to see over stuff to shoot things. So I'm not going to say it's a nerf, because like Boba Fett is also much shorter and you can hide him behind things now that you maybe couldn't before. So that's sort of neat. But...
Right. Well, the trade-off obviously is what we've been talking about, which is the fact that now things things that exceed the size of the template, the new silhouette template, are not going to be eligible for shooting. Right. So that's a good thing.
Right. Like Luke's lightsaber is the classic example.
Right. And in the diagram, they show just how far that saber extends over the top of the silhouette. And likewise, like an ARC trooper on a flight stand, like the majority of the model would probably be above the top of that silhouette. But only the silhouette is targetable, which is, that's the trade-off. And it's a good one, I think. Again, the whole idea was to attempt to divorce the sculpt from the mechanics of measuring line of sight. And I think they've done a good job. I think that's been accomplished here.
I agree. It also makes some like really awkward interactions with kneeling models way better, because all of a sudden like your DLT and Rebel Trooper squads like draws line of sight from as if it was standing,
Right.
Yep.
So Kyle, you can stop complaining about that.
But now the reverse is gonna happen, where it's like, hey, there's a kneeling trooper there. Can you put that silhouette behind it?
Oh, totally. I mean, and I think the biggest thing that is probably going to be impacted by that are sniper teams. Since the lead model is always on a knee, sniper teams are drawing line of sight from a higher angle and are also going to be able to be easier to see.
Right. Now, technically, all snipers are standing at the same height, which is useful, but also, like you say, you have a little bit more height, but a little less ability to hide, and that's generally the truth for short models. And then the reverse is true for large models, right? You're more able to hide.
And it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this affects gameplay. And so far as like for most models, this sort of increases the footprint that they take up on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be interested to see, like, for instance, Wookiees are a lot taller than normal normal unit troopers. Like, are Wookiees actually going to be taller than the silhouette?
Yeah,
probably.
I think so. I mean, the unit leader definitely is the dude that's holding his sword like 3 feet up in the air.
I mean, like, you shouldn't be able to shoot the sword, but you definitely should be able to shoot his head. Like, it'll be interesting to see how big the silhouette is when we're looking at models like that, because all trooper units have not been created equal up until this point.
Right, and that's going to be the silhouette's going to be the great leveler.
Well, right? I mean, I guess my fundamental question is, should a unit of Wookiees gain that bonus?
Right, again, we don't actually know what the fallout's going to be until we get it on the table.
I know. I'm asking the hard-hitting questions.
I mean, it's not like we're talking about like
it's not like Wookiees were
extremely frustrating competitive Wookiee meta that's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it's not like Wookiees were tearing up the meta or anything like that.
No, I know, and I don't think this changes it. I'm curious, like, if large models, like, is Chewbacca all of a sudden shorter? Does he draw a line of sight from his chest? Like, that's kind of weird.
It may be the case, but now you can put Chewbacca on a pile of crap and make him like really tall, and it doesn't hurt him any because that is not part of the silhouette. It's because our brains have been trained to fire at models, and now we have to train them to fire at silhouettes.
Sure. So here's the next question. Does, for instance, Wookiees have unhindered, right? Is it unhindered?
Yeah,
that allows them to go over difficult terrain or whatever?
Yeah, they have unhindered. That's correct.
So do you draw the height for unhindered from the silhouette or the top of the model?
Right. Now that's another big thing, and I almost wanted to talk about this on the cast, but now that you brought it up, I have a great opportunity here. Movement is still determined. Your ability to move over things is still determined by the height of your miniature. So now is it going to be determined by the height of the silhouette? Is there now a standard?
Right. Like, are all models technically the same height? And like,
it gets a little funny, doesn't it? Right? Because now you have like Bossk and Wookiees who are tall. They're able to quite literally vault over terrain that almost every other like human-sized miniature wouldn't be able to do. They'd have to climb it because it's taller than they are.
I mean, rules as written, I think the height of the miniature technically stays the same, and I think that they would be able to unhindered over terrain like that as normal. However, I think that this silhouette thing implies that they should not be able to do that. So, assuming it changes the perceived height of the model.
Right. So I just grabbed one of my Wookiees.
Okay.
How tall would you guess a Wookiee is from bottom of the base to top of head? If the silhouette, I'll tell you, the silhouette template is 42 millimeters tall.
I'm gonna guess 46.
I'm gonna go with 60.
It is 50.
Okay, so the average of our guesses practically.
So is that the average Wookiee?
Well, I didn't take. No, that's not the unit leader. That's like the normal dude who's holding two swords, nothing above his head. That is just bottom of base to top of head.
Okay, so the silhouette is smaller than a Wookiee.
Yeah, the silhouette comes up to like Wookiee, like tricep, basically.
Okay.
Wow, that's
So
a
that
back
what
of his
we're
arm.
basically saying is that if you've got a unit of Wookiees, they're in like SWAT team mode the whole time.
Yeah.
They're crunched over. I don't know.
Yeah, man, Wookiees are smart. They know not to get shot.
I don't know. Tell that to every Rebel player that have played Wookiees ever.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
all they do.
We've been constantly shouting at the leader, "Put your damn sword down!" The entire time we've played Wookiees, and I
Yeah,
think
I
he
mean,
finally learned.
I think this is a good first step, kind of getting back to the discussion at hand.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that it's very likely that there should be silhouettes for various unit types as we move forward. Um, Wookiees should undoubtedly have their own profile. I mean, B1s are probably shorter than the silhouette, right?
no. So it's funny you mentioned that. The B1 unit leader, who's the most relevant one, right? Um, the one that's like standing up like a prairie dog. The antenna is 47 millimeters. So from bottom of base to top of antenna is 47 millimeters. Sorry,
So
46 millimeters.
okay,
So he's taller than the silhouette.
nice.
Um,
I mean, you probably shouldn't be able to shoot the antenna, anyways.
right.
Yeah,
But I
It
guess,
does mean you draw a line of sight higher up the model.
yeah, I mean, it looks like your average B1 to the top of the head is about 45, 40, 44 millimeters. So even your average B1 is taller than the silhouette.
I mean, if we ever get Ewoks, it pretty much like all of a sudden they're like enraged large. Like somebody cast enlarge on them, right?
Yeah,
Because
right.
they're all gonna have silhouettes that are the size of Wookiees. So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Seems
It's interesting. I think it's overall positive change.
yeah,
there
totally.
there are places where it's awkward, but
Yeah.
yeah. Now I can make my kneeling rocket launcher B1 and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, totally. There are a lot of positives, and I think it's a good first step.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to like retrain our brains to think silhouette, and that's gonna be a process, like with any new thing, you know. But I think it's great. I think this is what the game needed, because now you can go hobby crazy and not even sweat the competitive implications.
Yeah, I mean, like being able to have Grievous with like model doing his like weird lightsaber,
Yeah.
spinny thing is like a thing you can do, and you don't have to be concerned that it's gonna screw up your like. You can use that model at a competitive level and not feel bad about it, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yep. Yeah, this is a positive change for sure.
No need for two Grievous models. No need for the crouching Grievous and the big arm Grievous.
There's just some questions that need to be answered, I think.
Yep. Yeah, the moving over terrain thing I think is the biggest one probably.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the answer is clear to me that like it's the way it always has been. The silhouette rules just affect line of sight, right?
Yep.
But it has weird implications, is all.
Yeah, the question is, should it be that way?
Right. Yeah. Should it be? And I mean, maybe the answer is yes. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yep. All right. So the last bit in there is they added guidance on terrain.
They did.
A step in the right direction. 100%.
So I like the guidelines. I don't like the pictures of the example tables.
we were discussing this a little bit before we went live. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so they're medium line of sight blocking pieces. They're probably actually small line of sight blocking pieces, and their large line of sight blocking pieces are probably actually medium line of sight blocking pieces. I don't really feel like they actually have like large pieces of line of sight blocking. Maybe with the exception if you're looking at the image of the like the generator thing in the top left hand corner. That maybe could be considered large.
Yeah, I think that's approaching large, that generator, because I think we've seen these pieces on their streams, right? And we know that generator is actually quite large.
Yeah, I mean, like that could block an ATRT, I think.
Oh, easy.
Yep.
But I think, the other buildings in there, it's sort of questionable, and even that, if they're large, they're kind of on the smallish side. So yeah, I mean, I think it's the right number of terrain pieces. I think it's the right density of things that are area terrain and line of sight blocking terrain, and I think all of that's right. I just think that the pieces of terrain that they're kind of showcasing as examples is not the best. Which, whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, like they have the crashed escape pod on there as like a medium-sized line of sight blocker.
Yeah, I mean
I
that
would
thing
call
is
that
like
small.
that's like scatter terrain as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Yeah,
It's debatable whether you can even hide a one model behind that thing.
yeah. I actually still have it. I have it here on my desk. Actually, I have the model, and I don't think that's very medium at all. I think that's kind of small. That's just my opinion, man. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like I put something like that down, and like it's equivalent to like some crates.
Yeah, it
Like,
ain't medium if I can't hide a tauntaun behind it. Sorry.
Anyway, all right. So, short version, guidance good, pictures bad.
yeah.
Pictures. I don't. The pictures aren't bad. I think the arrangement is not great. But whatever. We don't have to drill down this far.
Yeah.
The point is, we're moving closer and closer to, pre-established setups, which has sort of been my bugaboo. I feel like competitive events, much like how we have the silhouettes now. I don't think it would harm competitive too much if you had some like guidance of like, here's some ideas about how you could set up your tables. So not like strictly speaking, but like this is now we have guidelines. We could also go even further and say these are some setup guidelines. And here's some good examples of how to do it. And if you want to copy it, great. You don't have to copy it, but this would be, something that might be a repeatable thing. It wouldn't have to be, mandatory by any means, but it would be nice if you had some small ability to say like, if I go to an event, this is what I can expect. I think that would enhance that aspect of it, and that would help preparation.
Yeah, like what you shouldn't see anymore are those like totally wide open tables where you look at that and you're like, there's literally nowhere to hide on this table.
Yeah, for real.
And I've seen that, within the last couple of months even.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's less of that.
Yeah, I mean the ratio of those kinds of tables to the better setup ones is definitely getting better by a long shot. I think the last prime I went to, there might have been like 2 out of 15 tables that I could have complained about. But otherwise, I think we were doing pretty good. The ratio is a lot better now. There's maybe like 10% of tables that are still kind of falling through the cracks though. But these guidelines will help reduce that even further.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear what Brad and Nima have to say about how they totally didn't set this table up on an axis.
Yeah, so if you want more on building competitive terrain, Brad and Nima talked for like an hour last week on our show about it.
Yeah.
And then
I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, Brad's got to be looking at it and like cringing.
Yeah, he actually said something today. He's like, I hate everything about this table. But yeah, I think the guidance is good. The text of the guidance is good
for sure.
All right, so that was tourney regs. You guys got anything else?
I guess not.
Not really. Be a champion of SOS. That's all I have to say.
Yep.
Let it guide you.
And honestly, as much as we complained about MOV, I think this is still, I think there's still more positives than negatives.
You shut your dirty mouth.
Well, I think the silhouettes is definitely not positive.
That's my point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought
you were talking about like MOV. Yeah. There's more positive.
Right.
I was like, what?
Right. You're like, huh? I know. I wasn't being clear. What I'm saying is the overall release has more positives than negatives.
Okay. All right. Great. Glad we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right now nobody can play Legion tournaments in person, so MOV not going to be a factor at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe this won't be a factor ever again. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So we had a tactics topic, but we're going to actually push it to next week because we already talked for 45 minutes about tournament regs. So any final thoughts?
No.
Nope, I'm brain dead.
Do you have any final thoughts, Kyle?
I'm really enjoying painting B1s, man. Like bone white is like so easy to paint. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
I fiddled with and actually painted all of my B1s in a different darker color scheme, and then it looked awful. And I'm like, why am I messing around? I'm just gonna paint these guys how they're supposed to look. So I just went with the boring like beige bone white thing, and it instantly was super easy and looked decent. So for those that are waffling on your B1 color schemes, just paint them like beige bone white. Save yourself an aneurysm. That's my final thought.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta just remember, like, you gotta paint like 50 of those dudes.
Yeah, because like you're definitely taking like 6 units of 7 models most of the time. So
yeah, right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, save yourself the heartache and the headache.
Don't get me wrong. If you're like an amazing painter and you love painting the same model 42 times, in exquisite detail, do that. But that's not me.
For the rest of us plebeians, we'll be content with bone white over here.
Yep. Yeah. So that's my final thought. All right. Well, anyway, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
And I'm David.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Ban MOV.
Rest in peace, Rebel Z6.
Join us next week for another episode of the Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.